Greetings everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Army Testing Log. This is Untitled Chapter, and today we're going to look at a possible revival of Vampire Deathstar. So, for those of you who don't know, Vampire Deathstar was a very formidable build back in the days of early Total War Warhammer 1, where there were no healing limitations. So, Vampire Count players can simply just pile all their units into one small circle, throw an Invocation of Nehek on them, and his whole army will be healed. And that was very OP because no healing caps, no maximum numbers of units you can heal at the same time. So yeah, you can just keep healing your whole army until you run out of Winds of Magic. Thankfully, limitations to healing, nerfs to healing were introduced, and now this OP build was no more. Or was it? Basically, I might or might not have brought it back, but accidentally discovered that if you combine the right units together, you can circumvent certain limitations to healing and just make your whole army in a small area regenerate in formidable speed. So, how does this build work in practice, and how can you actually make a build yourself? Well, let's have a look at the battlefield. So here we are on the battlefield. Now let's take a look at the army comps. For the vampire counts, we have a front line of zombies. In the air, we have a couple Felbats and a Vargheists in the middle. The second line of infantry consists of Grave Guards. In the middle, it's the Regiment of Renowned Stonesmen, who have very good stats, also regeneration on them. Just very solid defensive infantry. And we have a couple Skeleton Spearmen, just for extra bodies to bog down monsters, and, well, reserve forces in case the line breaks. Now we have these elite Blood Knights, very good anti-large cavalry, and also just very good in general in rear charging, chasing and routing units and all. And now let's take a look at the character and single entity core. We have Heinrich Himmler, who is a wizard with Chaos Tombblade on him, and we have White King for some extra melee power, Necromancer on an Unholy Lodestone Corpse God, as well as this ethereal, not ethereal, but very spooky Claw of Nagash, enshrouding everything around him in a mystical mist. On the opponent's side, we have frontline, Chameleon Skinks in the front doing some skirmishing work. Three Temple Guards. One is a Regiment of Renowned version Temple Guard Star Chamber Guardians. Very good, solid infantry with armor piercing. Can hold for absolutely eternity against zombies and just general vampire frontline. We also have some Saurus warriors with shields on both ends, and along with them, Bastillodons with solar engine, delivering some third-degree sunburns for the vampire count, and Saurus Scarvet on a Carnosaur, and as well as a Slam Mage priest with high magic, solid magic choice with great healing, area control in the form of Tempest, direct damaging spells, buffing as well. So very solid choice in general. But usually this kind of Lizardmen Deathstar, we see them with more of a life mage in general. But yeah, this is definitely a surprise pick for me. So let's see how the battle goes. Right off the bat, we can see the Vampire Count army is pushing in towards the Lizardmen frontline, and the Air Force is now moving towards the left of the Lizardmen formation. Unfortunately, I did not realize, well, they brought a Slam Mage Priest with high magic, so I did not expect that Tempest to come in, and these Vargheists ventured a little too close, and now they're being severely punished by the magic attack, as well as the Bastillodon pot shots on them. So I tried to throw in some Felbats to silence the range core of the Lizardmen, but with the close presence of Temple Gods and also Saurus Scarvet, these Velbats couldn't really accomplish much other than, well, silencing them for a few seconds, distracting the firepower. So the Vargheists are still getting shot at, and Velbats took massive damage for not much value gained. But fortunately for me, with the Vargheists being the main focus of the Lizardman artillery, that means that Blood Knights and my infantry core, as well as the character blob, is basically safe from Lizardman firepower. So that basically works for me because that's the most important part of my army. just kind of feel bad for these Var guys getting blasted to 3rd-degree sunburns by the Bastiladons, and now even a couple Invocation of Neheks did not manage to save them, and a second Tempest dropped in, and now they're dead. But good news is my front line has finally reached the target, and now they're charging into the fray, with zombies pushing in, Claw of Nagash just hammering home, Kemler pushing in, White King pushing in, even the Necromancer, rattling, shaky corpse cart is pushing in, trying to get his own share of lizard blood. A banishment is dropped right on top of these stunsmen, dropping them down to 5,400 health. And a zombie summon is dropped in the back lines, blocking down the Chameleon Skings and taking the tension away from the Temple God. And now Blood Knights are charging into the rear, but props to my opponent, turning back the Temple Gods in time, doing a minor rear charge. And now they're dishing out some decent damage against the Blood Knights. And with the charging of this Saurus Garvat body slamming into a fray and popping Deadly Onslaught on himself, now the Blood Knights are taking massive anti-large armor piercing damage, and now they really should start moving out of the area. So that's exactly what they did, and start pushing for this Land Mage. That got a little bit separated from the main core, but with a timely response of the Star Chamber Guardians and the Scarlet Threat in hot pursuit, the Blood Knights have to pull out. But good news for me again, the middle pocket of Temple Gods are broken off. The Stunsmen have healed up back to 6,100 HP, massive healing, and all of that is done by some passive aura healing, and not a single Winds of Magic is spent on healing them for now. So I'll take a little bit closer look to this healing mechanic later, but for now let's focus on the battle. Now more skeleton spears are pushing in to bog down the for more bodies and bog down monsters, and the Temple Gods are just swarming in to just stop the tide of undead from pushing and getting to the Slan Mage. But this actually works out for me because they're clumped up around the Claw of Nagash, and now everything here is getting drained by the Claw of Nagash. Meanwhile, the Carnosaur is now chasing after Kemler and trying to assassinate him, but Kemler, being a spellcaster as he is, he's not that squishy, with a lot of access to healing power, and on a horse he's rather slippery as well. Now, Lizardmen infantry are now hit by Curse of Years, debuffing their attack, while the undead units are juiced up by Von Hellstein's Macabre. Even skeleton spears have like 49 melee attack, which is higher than the defense of the Star Chamber Guardians. And so that means even zombie skeleton spears, these chaff units, can now drag down the Saurus warriors, elite of the elite, into the mud. Grave Guards are now held in reserve. These Grave Guards are basically in full health at this point. And right now, things are looking not so hot for the Lizardmen. Now, the elite units are running low, breaking off. The Slan Mage tried to save the day with a banishment on some Stunsmen, but that did not work out because it simply went straight through the Star Chamber Guardians. And while 1/3 of the Stunsmen HP is all that remain, they're not routing, and they're not even crumbling at this point, and they are still healing and going strong. And the Star Chamber Guardians at this point are basically only running on fumes, and they cannot take it anymore, and they're breaking off. And with the Lizardman infantry corps gone, now the Slan Mage is separated. The Blood Knights are performing rear charges, breaking off the remaining infantry of the Lizardman, and the Slan Mage, with the pursuit of a almost fully healed Kemler on the healing cap, and some Necromancers. Oh, the White King is almost on their healing cap too. So the Slan Mage cannot take it anymore and has to run away. And with the loss of leadership, that means the Lizardman army is basically doomed, even with a half health Saurus Scar vet. And that spells the end of the Lizardman army. So let's have a look at how both armies performed. On the Vampire side, as you can see, the characters didn't really generate much value, but seeing how they both the Kemler and White King reached their healing caps, that itself is value generated, because they absorb so much damage and attention from the Lizardmen that could have been used elsewhere and eliminate the actual damage dealers, Claw of Nagash and Blood Knights. So that itself is good enough as some kind of value, as in damage absorbed. And I wish actually CA can have an indicator about how much damage they took, just to have a little bit of comparison, because, well, tanking is contribution to the battle after all. And most of the fighting were done by zombie frontlines, skeleton spears, and this one single stunsman. And given how survivable they are against enemy attack, especially with the regeneration, they absolutely did their job in holding the enemy in place and allowing the actual breadwinners to do their job here. Blood Knights getting 1400 value, recharging, breaking off enemy routing units, and Claw of Nagash just sucking the life out of every Lizardman infantry around it. Absolute MVP of the game. Air Force wiped out by Tempest, so not really much could be said here. And on the Lizardman side, the Slime Mage did a lot of damage in the form of Tempest and the 2 banishments on my Stunsman, but unfortunately a bit of the damage here is also partly dealt to the damage on their own Temple Gods. So this is definitely an inflated figure. And for the Connoisseur, hunting down Kemmler for the whole game, but all the damage it dealt to Kemmler simply got healed up. So the damage dealt by the Lizardman leaders were basically neglected after all the units healed up. For the infantry, since they were just fighting stunsmen and zombies the whole time, they didn't really pay for themselves. And the range core, well, they got bogged down by melee units, so the full potential cannot be utilized. So there's that. And so basically a whole very survivable infantry line clash against Lizardman frontline that is unbreakable, and somehow the infantry line of the undead, well, fragile but stood firm. So how did that work? Well, let's have a look at the army breakdown. So, as I've said, I've not used a single Invocation of Nehek on the characters and the stunsmen. Yet, they still reach their healing caps just by natural regenerating properties. How did that happen? Now, before we talk about that, we have to look into one of the mechanics of this game, the stacking of effects. Say, here we have a couple of corpse cards that provide Vigor Mortis to all the units around it, buffing their melee defense and attack by 5. So, having 2 corpse cards together with a unit on top of them, getting covered by both corpse cards' abilities, doesn't mean that the unit will receive 2 stacks of Vigor Mortis and get a +10 melee defense and attack buff. No, it will only still receive 1 stack, which is +5 defense and attack. So basically this shows that the same effects with the same name cannot stack in this game. However, there's a way to circumvent this, which is the same effects with a different name can stack. So here we have a Claw of Nagash Mortis engine, providing reliquary binding to units around itself. That's a 2 hit points per second regeneration. Now we also have a corpse card with Unholy Lodestone with a Necromancer on it. Unholy Lodestone also does +2 hit points per second. Now, despite being the same effect, these effects can stack because they have a different name. This, the corpse card provides Unholy Lodestone, and Claw of Nagash provides Reliquary Binding. Now, that means we have a +4 hit points per second regeneration. Now we throw in some extra abilities. Master of the Dead. You can use this ability on both Heinrich Himmler and Necromancer. Basically, any Necromancer characters have it. Other Vampire Count Lords might not have it. Anyways, Master of the Dead provides an extra 4 hit points per second. Now, combined with the other 2 effects, we have a +8 hit points per second regeneration so far. And then, the reason why I go for Heinrich Himmler is simply because, well, you've got this Chaos Tomb Blade, plus 8 hit points per second. That also resurrects dead combatants as well as buffing melee attack on other units. Now, combine everything together, we have a plus 16 hit points per second buff. That is actually amazing, because if we do a little bit of quick math, say, open it up, an overcast Invocation of Nehek heals 864 hit points for the whole duration. Divided by 16, that means the whole regeneration stacking aura only needs 54 seconds to provide the same healing as Invocation of Nehek. And this comes for free. This doesn't cost a single Winds of Magic. And also, it doesn't have the limitations of the usual healing spells, where you can only heal 4 units at once. So that means if you have a core of characters, 3 of them, plus a Claw of Nagash, plus a Stonesman and a zombie in the vicinity, like I just did in the Lizardmen replay. Now, this guy, like, say if I drop an Invocation of Nehek on Heinrich Kemmler, this guy, that doesn't mean that everything in the vicinity will get healed. It's more like maybe, say, a zombie, Claw of Nagash, White King, and Kemmler will get healed. Because these healing are kind of random. And if you want to prioritize your healing, you definitely wouldn't want to just be healing your zombie. So this healing number limitation can actually be a rather annoying drawback to the healing spells. But with the healing auras, you don't have this limitation. The only catch is it takes time to take effect and slowly regenerate. You can't just keep pumping it and just keep boosting, accelerating your healing. But then you can always just throw extra Invocation of Nehek on it, so it's all good. And since you do not have to constantly cast Invocation of Nehek, that means you are free to cast other spells now. You can throw in a Winds of Death, you can use more Winds of Magic for Curse of Years, or you say you want to use a Van Hels's Dance Macabre to increase your infantry combat effectiveness. It just frees up more Winds of Magic for more tactical options for you to exploit your enemy with. And if you have something with a regeneration ability, say the Stonesman, now you have up to 20 hit points regeneration per second now. So that shortens the whole regenerating time to an Invocation of Nehek equivalent down to, say, 43 seconds. And that is basically why the Stonesman could have just basically survived a banishment, heal back up around 700 HP in like 30 seconds to 1 minute. So yeah, this is pretty insane as a mechanic, and provides your melee core, basically your whole vampire army around the character core, some massive healing. So for the rest of the build, you want to have some defensive infantry, definitely. So Grave Gods and Stonesmen, definitely your core melee units. Especially the Stonesman with regeneration and just better combat stats, becoming an absolute anchor in a lot of situations, basically means that your characters can just fight on top of these Stonesman's protection and just keep doing the healing they need. Because Heinrich Kemmler needs to be in melee to have his Chaos Tomb Blade in effect. And also, Claw of Nagash needs to be in melee to start draining the enemy units. And when if you remember the post-battle screen, you could have remembered that like the whole infantry core doesn't really do much damage. Even Stonesman, almost reaching his heal cap, failed to recover all their value. So you really need to rely on something else to do the damage. So for against enemy infantry, you have Claw of Nagash, which is amazing. And you also want to have a killy mobile force. That's why I picked Vargheist, Blood Knights, and some Felbats, because of course you can always go double Blood Knights, but I personally like to have some Air Force with me, so here with Vargheist and Felbats. But yeah, Blood Knights for their massive charge bonus with very good stats in general, solid shock have, basically anti-everything, rear charging, charging monsters, charging cavalry, charging lords. They're just great for any scenarios. And Vargei's just armor-piercing damage dealer that can drop onto enemy units and deal massive damage. But of course, like sometimes things just doesn't go your way and they get destroyed. But yeah, so that's basically the whole build. You need zombie chaps, some skeleton spears to bog down some monsters and cavalry, protecting the rear of your graveguard, front line, all that. So that is basically a general discussion of the build. And actually, this build is not only limited to a grind situation. Say here, for example, you have a Skaven jezzail duel, with one of them being the Untitled Sharpshooters Regiment Renowned version, very deadly, very accurate snipers. Now, I have a Claw of Nagash on the other end, and with the large hitbox also like slow movement speed, it can't really dodge the shots, and it's taking massive damage, as you can see. But with the regeneration available to it right now, it's actually rapidly healing and just kind of mitigating the incoming damage from the Untitled Sharpshooter and the jezzails. That also bought myself a little bit of time to drop down some Felbats and Vargeis to silence them, to reach the front line, for these Black Knights to reach the front line, reach their target, and act as a distraction Carnifex on the Claw of Nagash side. Due to the characters and the Council God, the Felbats have to fall back as well as the Vargeis. But now, for the whole time, my units are pushing in to shut down their range cores, silence them, and I could have only afforded, like, I just dropped like one Invocation of Nehek onto the Claw of Nagash. So if not for these healing, this Claw of Nagash will be down to some danger low HP levels, and not like right now, half health. And even now, the range of the Skaven units are still firing into the Claw of Nagash, doing massive damage, and it's just rapidly approaching its doom at this point. But thanks to the healing, it's still surviving. And if we fast forward a little bit, you can see I'm able to afford some fast forward a little bit. Like, it's the whole hit point level is going danger low on the Claw of Nagash, especially with other effects on it. Liver Mortis, some more poison wind globes, and at this point, let's look at the regeneration situation. Okay, one Invocation of Nehek provides 864 hit points, and if we add that, and we have already used up 2,000 and around 600 healing cap. So if we minus that by 800, that means only by the passive healing alone, we have already regenerated 1,800 damage. And when we look at the health level lower than 1,800, which means without these regeneration, the Claw of Nagash would have been long dead. And that is how powerful this healing combination can be. It basically guarantees the survival of, say, one big target. The Claw of Nagash, in this example, guarantees to save it from a certain destruction. And right now, it still have enough HP to kick around in rather healthy leadership, and do not have to suffer from extra damage from crumbling. Another notable fact of this build is that you're not only boosting your troops' combat effectiveness by keeping them alive. Like, of course, you will have some rapidly regenerating infantry monsters, characters that can allow you to tank more damage and dish more damage because they survive longer. But that's not it. You're also providing some important support to your enemy. Say here, you have a Necromancer. With the Unholy Lowstone Corpse God, it can provide Rigor Mortis, which provides nearby units with an additional 5 melee defense and attack, and combined with Kemmler's Chaos Tombblade, Now everything around them has a +10 attack and +5 defense. And that basically helps to bridge the gap between your, well, terrible infantry zombies, for example, and something like, say, a Bretonnian peasant. Like now, they have like around the same attack as your as a Bretonnian peasant. Otherwise, they would not have been able to dish out as effective damage against the mob. But actually, this is not the end of it. More importantly, you're saving up a lot of Winds of Magic by not having to cast Invocation of Nehek, right? So you just spend the rest of the Winds of Magic to debuff your enemies, or just buff your own troops instead. Like with the Von Hell's Dance Macabre just cast into this blob, now the zombies have a 29 attack, and that is with the Mist of the Lady active, which debuffs their melee attack by a little bit. But even so, they have 29 attack, which means they now have a decent chance to finally break through the defenses of the Royal Pegasus Knights, which has around 30 melee defense. And that means that they can chip in a little bit more damage on these shiny white knights and drag them into the mud. And if you look at some elite units, like say this Stearnsman, now it has a massive 63 attack. With 63 attack, this is a massive a number. Basically, it's almost double of its original attack. And now they can easily penetrate the defense of paladins and make consistent contact, even on these like elite heroes of Bretonnia. Like that means they can all just keep doing massive damage to the enemies and just allow your whole blob to fight a little better, a little stronger, and that's key to a vampire count death blob fight, because that's how they fight. They just kind of have to stay in the fray, outlast their opponents, while the elite warriors, blood knights, bar guys, monsters can hunt down the key units. So does that mean this potent healing build is an auto win in any matchup, just like the early days of Total War Warhammer 1, where you bring the Deathstar build and you basically win the match? Personally, I think this is definitely not the case. Simply because there are a few blatant weaknesses. I mean, they're not irreparable weaknesses, you can patch them up somehow, but they're still there for your enemies to exploit. First of all, just like all vampire count builds, this heavily relies on your character, especially on high rank Kimmler. That is because if you lost high rank Kimmler, you lose Chaos Tombblade, and this is the most important item, most important source of healing in this build, not only because it has massive healing power, but also because it has this ability to resurrect dead combatants. The main advantage of Invocation of Nehek over regular healing spells like Earth Blood is that it can keep healing a depleted unit. A unit, say, only have 10% of its original character models left. Now, with Invocation of Nehek, you can heal it back to half strength, because even with fully healed models, you can keep healing them. But with something like Regrowth or Earthblood, you can't. And you need Chaos Tomblade's resurrection capabilities for this healing aura to truly match Invocation of Nehek. So remember, definitely protect your Kimmler, and that applies to the Necromancer as well, because Vigor Mortis is very useful in just making your zombies, skeletons, and all your infantry fight a little bit more effectively. Now, if something like, say, the Star Dragon dropped down onto your Kimmler, what should you do? Thankfully, Kimmler has this item called Cloak of Mist and Shadows that provides 75% physical resistance for him. So if you're in a pinch and you need to get out, this item can buy you a bit of time, and with the Strider ability it provides as well, your Kimmler can just slip away from any circumstances. But the problem is, you can't really kill off the single entities fast enough, so your Kemmler has to keep running. That comes in this weakness in sniping power comes in the form of the lack of large killing monsters. You don't have a dragon for your lord, well, because you got Kemmler, so that's not gonna happen. So now the only sniping power you have is Krell. And as you can see, Krell is a food unit, and he's summoned, so he's not gonna be here all the time. And as a food character, he can get stuck easily. And now, like just now, he was getting stuck on his own units, and also he can get knocked back easily as well, just flying all the way over there. And now he has to run past his own troops again, going through the crowd, just like a Black Friday event, and just to get to his own target. Now, the lack of DPS not only manifests in the lack of sniping power, but just a lack of DPS in general. As you have remembered from the post-battle screen, you saw that the infantry basically did nothing, and all the damage was done by the Claw of Nagash and the Blood Knights right over there. Now, without these damaging characters, that means your whole infantry is basically a static sitting box of, well, not so threatening meatbags that are waiting to get punched into dust. You need to win the mobility fight, or at least leave your mobility units to be alive, just so you can kill off enough enemy units to win. Otherwise, you'll just be a little sandbag and just keep getting punched in the face by some elite infantry like Star Chamber Guardians until they're all dead. And the most important thing of this build is do not blob. Yes, the first generation of Warhammer Vampire Deathstar blobbed a lot, but that's because there were not that many damaging area of effect spells. The only things I could have think of were Banishment, Flamestorm, and Burning Head, because there were just not that many Lords of Magic at the beginning. So, but now you have a lot of other stuff, like say Lord of Shadows, Pit of Shades, or Pendulum, or for Lord of Life, Dollars Below. Well, you also have Foot of Gork. So that means your opponents have a lot more capabilities to deal with blobs, and if you blob and get your whole army got wiped out by, say, a spell, or now you don't have anything to heal up, and your opponent can just hunt down your remaining units and crush you. Or say in the Lizardmen replay, I throw in my extra Graveguards early, and they will keep fighting and getting harmed by getting damaged in the fight, as well as by the banishment, simply because they blobbed up. Then now I have a lot less health on the Graveguards to affect the balance of power and cause a rout, if that banishment didn't went in my favor. Like, to say the least, I needed that Graveguard to have a decent health level to keep grinding down the elite infantry of the Saurus. So yeah, as all competent player in Warhammer would know, do not blob your troops, no matter how survivable or tanky they might be. So that's all I have to say about a basic build for this Vampire Count Deathstar army. Of course, you don't have to stick to the one set army list. You can always switch out a unit here and there, like how I switch out the Claw of Nagash for a regular Mortis engine here. Or you can switch out some Blood Knights and get yourself a Terrorgeist instead for extra character sniping power. Just adjust the build according to your playstyle for maximum effect. Of course, just make sure you have these some core units intact to maximize the healing effect, so it can still be called a Vampire Deathstar healing build. And that's basically all I have to say about the build today. And what do you think about it? Do you think it's an OP build that can be viable in all matchups, or do you think it's very cheesy and can be specifically countered? If you have any thoughts about it, let me know and comment down below. And if you like the video, please do like and subscribe, because this is still a new channel and I would appreciate every single bit of attention I can get. And if you have an idea for a wild build that you want someone to test it out for you, please do feel free to comment down below as well and let me know, and I'll have a look at it and see if I can make a video out of it. And that basically wraps up all I have to say for today's video. Tactical Leech, signing out.